In the latest episode of our podcast, Into the Killing, we discuss the case of the Last Call Killer. It's believed that in the early 1990s, the Last Call Killer murdered and butchered at least 4 men. Then suddenly, he stopped killing. He might have gotten away with it, but thanks to dedicated investigators, he was arrested after nearly a decade. You can find Into the Killing on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you find great podcasts. Just before we start today's video, we're just going to take a few moments to talk about our fantastic sponsor, Magellan TV. Magellan TV is the best streaming service for documentaries, and they have a lot of great true crime documentaries. We've covered many murder cases here on Criminally Listed, but nothing is quite like the case featured in the documentary, The Nightclub Killer, which is available on Magellan TV. It's about the murder of 3 women in 2005. One of the murders was even recorded on voicemail. I really don't want to say too much about this documentary because there are plenty of twists and turns and I don't want to spoil anything. The Nightclub Killer is a documentary you'll be thinking about long after watching it. I love Magellan TV's history documentaries as well. They have a great series called The Inquisition. It's a haunting examination of what some groups within the Catholic Church did to innocent people for centuries. It's an enthralling series, and my only complaint is that I only had 4 episodes. There's never been a better time to sign up for Magellan TV. That's because Magellan TV has an amazing, exclusive offer for Criminally Listed viewers. You can get 30% off an annual membership, which means you get access to over 3,000 documentaries for just $3.50 a month. Simply click on the link in the description to claim your discounted annual membership today. If you've been watching with me and you let your subscription lapse, you can still claim this offer. So please check out Magellan TV because you'll find something great to watch and you'll be supporting Criminally Listed. Number 3. Marianne Bordt. St. George Island is in Florida's Panhandle. In January 2010, 73-year-old Marianne Bordt and her husband, Heinz, were vacationing there with her grandson, 5-year-old Camden Ayers. Marianne and Heinz were from Neufringen, Germany. Neufringen is a quiet district not far from Stuttgart. Camden's parents, Karen and David, met when David, a computer software engineer, was working in Germany for a few years. They got married but divorced in 2006 when Camden was 18 months old. After the divorce, both Karen and David were living in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and they shared custody of Camden. Every year, Heinz and Marianne spent 3 months visiting their daughter and grandchild. On the afternoon of January 4th, 2010, Heinz went out to do some grocery shopping. He left Camden with his grandmother in their rented vacation home on St. George Island. When Heinz returned home about 2.5 hours later, he found the door open. He didn't see his wife or grandson. Then his 71-year-old wife, Marianne, walked into the house. She was wearing a soaking wet coat and long underwear. Marianne told Heinz that she had tried to kill herself by drowning herself in the Gulf of Mexico. Marianne then told him that she had killed 5-year-old Camden by drowning him in the bathtub. Marianne said that she killed Camden because she didn't want him to grow up in a broken home. Heinz went into the bathroom and he found Camden face down in the bathtub. He picked him up and carried him to the car. He made Marianne get into the car as well. He then drove towards a nearby fire station. Along the way, they came to a stop and Marianne tried to run away, but Heinz forced her to get back into the car. They made it to the fire station, but it was too late to save 5-year-old Camden Ayers. Heinz promptly turned his wife over to the police. Marianne Bordt was possibly looking at the death penalty for the murder. Her defense lawyer was going to argue that she was legally insane at the time of the murder. The defense claimed that Marianne's skull was fractured during World War II in 1944 when she was 5 years old during a Soviet air raid. She also saw her father killed during an air raid. As a result, she had mental problems throughout her entire life. Camden's father, David Ayres, did not believe that his former mother-in-law was mentally ill. He had known her for years, and she had never shown any signs of being mentally unwell. He also said that the explanation she gave of killing Camden because she didn't want him to grow up with divorced parents didn't make any sense. David said that Camden understood the situation about the divorce, and he was excited about having 2 houses, 2 sets of toys, 2 sets of cars, and so on. 2.5 years after the murder, a plea deal was made. Marianne Bordt pleaded guilty to murder, and she was sentenced to 21.5 years of prison. David Ayres objected to the plea deal because, while he didn't want her to be executed, he did think she deserved a longer sentence. His objection was noted, but overruled. Camden's mother, Karen, never attended a court hearing regarding her mother murdering her son. After Karen and David divorced, Karen remarried and had a daughter. At the time of this video, 82-year-old Marianne Bordt is serving her sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. Her current release date is Halloween 2028. She'll be 90 years old. Number 2. Martha White. In August 2014, Zach and Spring Reinhardt lived in a quiet neighborhood in Tallahassee, Florida, with their 2 sons, 8-year-old Aiden and 6-year-old Mason. On the morning of August 5, 2014, Zach and Spring went to work. Spring's mother, 63-year-old Martha White, was babysitting the 2 boys. Just after 11 a.m., the 2 boys were playing video games. White told Mason that she had a surprise for him. She then took him into the washroom. Shortly after they got into the washroom, 8-year-old Aiden heard his brother crying. Then Mason screamed, "I don't want to die. Please don't kill me." Aiden tried to get into the bathroom to help his younger brother, but the door was locked. So he called his father and then hid. His grandmother emerged from the bathroom and picked up a bottle of wine. White called out to Aiden that she had a surprise for him as well. Then she walked out of the house. Paramedics arrived at the family's home and they found Mason lying in a pool of blood on the floor of the bathroom. He had been stabbed multiple times in the chest. Mason was rushed to the hospital, but sadly, he succumbed to his wounds. Mason was just 2 days shy of his 7th birthday. Shortly after 911 was called, the police found 63-year-old Martha White at the end of a dead-end road about half a mile away from the family's home. White was covered in blood. She was carrying a bottle of wine and a bottle of Xanax. White was promptly arrested. When White was asked why she killed her grandson, she simply said that she was fed up. Martha White was charged with first-degree murder. It was initially ruled that White was unfit to stand trial. She was then admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Over 4 months, she underwent half a dozen psychological examinations. Then it was determined that she was fit to stand trial. White's lawyer was planning on using the insanity defense at her trial. But before the trial began, a plea deal was struck. Martha White pleaded guilty to killing her grandson in April 2016. She was sentenced to life without the chance of parole. Martha White is 70 years old at the time of this video. Coincidentally, White has the same birthday as the killer grandmother we covered in the first segment, Marianne Bordt, but Marianne was born 12 years earlier. Like Marianne Bordt, Martha White is incarcerated at the Lowell Correctional Institute in Ocala. Number 1. Carmela Del Rosa. In the autumn of 2010, Carmela Del Rosa was 50 years old. She lived in Fairfax, Virginia with her husband and her son. She also had a daughter, Mary Kathleen Ogdog, who went by the name Kat. Kat lived with her husband, James Ogdog, and their daughter, Angeline, who was born on June 21, 2008. Del Rosa immigrated from the Philippines to the United States when she was a teenager. She was a devout Catholic. On the night of November 29, 2010, Del Rosa went out with her husband, son, daughter, and granddaughter to Tyson's Corner Center, which is the largest shopping mall in Virginia. The family ate dinner in the food court. Del Rosa ate a kebab, some flatbread, and some frozen yogurt. When they were done, the family walked towards the parking garage. There is a pedestrian footbridge that connects the mall to the top floor of the 6th floor garage. Del Rosa was carrying her 2-year-old granddaughter, Angeline. When they got to the entrance of the bridge, her husband held the door open for her, but she told him to go ahead. As her family walked ahead, Del Rosa stopped in the middle of the bridge, leaned over the railing, and dropped Angeline. The 2-year-old fell 45 feet to the pavement below. People started screaming, and Kat turned around to see her mother leaning over the railing with her hands empty. 911 was called, and Angeline was rushed to the hospital. But tragically, she was pronounced dead a few hours later. Carmela Del Rosa was brought in for questioning. She admitted she threw her granddaughter off the bridge. Del Rosa was asked why she did it, and she said that she had lost her mind. Del Rosa said that when she dropped Angeline, she was thinking about her son-in-law, James, whom she had never liked. The police asked Del Rosa why she did it that night, and she said that she hadn't taken her medication for a while. Carmela Del Rosa went to trial nearly a year later, in September 2011. Her defense lawyer argued that she was not legally sane at the time of Angeline's murder. Del Rosa had been diagnosed with severe depression. In the months leading up to the murder, she tried to take her own life several times. A few weeks earlier, she had stopped going outside and stopped socializing with people who didn't live with her. The prosecution argued that Del Rosa murdered Angeline because she was spiteful, angry, and jealous. The prosecution also said that Del Rosa knew exactly what she was doing that night, and she didn't kill Angeline because she was mentally ill. They said that Del Rosa hated her son James because he got her daughter, Kat, pregnant out of wedlock. James and Kat got married before Angeline was born, but that didn't make Del Rosa happy. She thought that James had ripped her family apart, so she murdered Angeline despite James. Witnesses also testify that Del Rosa seemed to be jealous of the attention Angeline got. Finally, it was clear that Del Rosa knew what she was doing that night. As her family was walking on the bridge, she allowed them to walk ahead of her so they couldn't stop her from throwing Angeline over the railing. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and then the jury deliberated for 5 hours. They found Del Rosa guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to the maximum 35 years of prison. Carmela Del Rosa is 60 years old at the time of this video. She is serving her sentence at the Fluvanna Correctional Center in Troy, Virginia. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out the latest episode of our podcast, Into the Killing. In that episode, we discuss a horrifying serial killer cold case. You can find Into the Killing on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.